Hello and welcome to Thursday. This is our fourth day of devotions this week, and we're looking at Hosea chapter 1, and we're looking at a very interesting prophet, a fellow by the name of Hosea or Hosea, and contained within his name is the idea of salvation. He is called of God as a servant of the Lord into a unique situation. Many times prophets play acted. They did something physically to be an object lesson for the people of Israel. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. They did things like lay on their side for a certain number of days or build model siege works against a city. They did things with swords. They did things with hair. They did all kinds of different things that served as a object lesson for the people of Israel. Here's an interesting point where Hosea is being asked by God to play the role of Yahweh and then live out in the texture of his everyday life essentially what's going on and has been going on since the people of Israel have come into the land. And God has Hosea do something shocking. He has Hosea marry a woman known to be a prostitute. So we have the setup. Yahweh is played by Hosea, and Gomer is Israel and Judah. And so now we've already seen what's happened in the story. He has had a firstborn son was born to him. And the name of that son is Jezreel, which means God will sow, meaning sow seed, prepare for a harvest. You always have to sow seed in order to have a harvest. And it says God will sow. This kind of rings of the story to Abram when God tells Abram, you see those stars and you see that sand? The number of your seed is going to be greater than that. And so this rings true with everything that God has been speaking, first of all to Abram, then to Abraham, with the name of infusion of grace in his life. And then we have Isaac, then Jacob, then we have the 12 sons, and then we have the 12 tribes, and now we've moved fast forward, and we're towards the end and the impending judgment of God upon Israel. And so at this juncture, God has Hosea play his part and marry a known prostitute. The first son, Jezreel, is Hosea's, but the second child is a daughter. It says, not loved is the name of that daughter. And then we get to move right here into Hosea chapter 1, verses 8 through 9. It says, after she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, which Lo Ruhamah means, lo in Hebrew means not or no. So it's the antithesis. It opposes the noun. So it modifies Ruhamah. So Lo Ruhamah means not loved. It says after she had weaned, not loved, Gomer had another son. It doesn't say bore another son to Hosea. She now has another son. This doesn't appear to be Hosea's. And the Lord said to Hosea, call him Lo Ami. Lo is the word for no. Lo Ami. Not my people. So, not loved, not my people. Wow. And so this son is called not my people. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. And so that's awful sad. That's very tragic. Can you imagine playing the part of God, being Hosea, and the fabric of your life seems to be tearing you apart because your wife has given you a firstborn son, and then the next children are not yours. This is exactly what's been going on as the people of Israel have been consulting other gods which are not gods, as they have been involving themselves in idolatry, as they have been play acting as religious people, but their hearts have been far from God, they have been guilty of spiritual idolatry. Idolatry and adultery are synonymous very often in the Old Testament, because going after other gods means being unfaithful to the one true God. And so when Hosea finds himself in this predicament, he is actually living exactly what God has been living. Now, that's an interesting question. So don't you know that Hosea feels grief and concern and shock and disdain? Don't you know his stomach is churning? And so God is letting Hosea know how he feels. God is literally sharing with Hosea exactly how he feels. And he is actually living out the same saga in his life as God is dealing with his people that he has called by his name, Israel, and Judah, the southern kingdom. And so the name given to this child is "Not my people, for you're not my people, and I am not your God." We know for sure that they have turned away from the Lord to a great extent. And there is a point at which God is saying, you are not my people. And there's coming a point at which I will not be obligated to steer you and take care of you against all of your foes and your enemies. There's a point at which this is going to play out. But it's interesting, in all this dark and depressing situation, there is a promise tucked away in here. Yet the Israelites will be like the sand on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted. There's a connection back to the promise in the book of Genesis to Abram by God when he swore by himself because he could swear by none greater. We find that actually the Apostle Paul connects to this idea in the New Testament. And he says, in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, they will be called children of the living God. Wow, that's amazing. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, they will be called children of the living God. God has a restoration plan up his sleeve, so to speak. There is a giving up and there is a surrendering of the people to their own wishes and own desires. Hosea sees this. The firstborn son is his. The next two children belong to some other men or another man, because she's engaging herself in the trade of prostitution. This is exactly what's been going on with Israel. What God has intended for them to bring forth, they are not bringing forth. What God has sown in them is not coming forth, but they instead are sowing their wild oats. They are sowing to the flesh, and they're reaping corruption. So, I know it's not a very happy thought. What can we derive from that? What can we draw out of that for a meditation today? We can meditate upon this, that no matter how badly we think that we have blown it, how badly we have failed, and how much we have walked away, there is still a ring of a promise where God has said, where it's been said, you are not my people, they will be called children of the living God. He has an amazing dispensing of grace and mercy for the ones who turn and return to him. So he's not utterly giving up. He still has a way when there seems to be no way. So on this Thursday, let's think about that. God has a way where there doesn't seem to be a way. Let that fill our hearts and meditate upon that. The Lord bless you. Hope to see you tomorrow.